All right, so we're gonna take a look at this guy's the canceled DLCs of Marvel Spider-Man 2. Just gonna react, gonna see what he has to say. Essentially, I have my own opinions on it, but before we go in, as far as I understand, there were three DLCs planned. One for Beetle, one for Beetle, definitely one for Carnage, and was it the Spider-Verse one? I wonder how they would have done all that. And apparently, the hack is what made them opt out. You know, Insomniac got hacked, which I guess I understand. I mean, shit, they had bigger fish to fry once that happened. But let's take a look. Let's just see what this guy's got to say. We're gonna have to sit through these
Whoa.
ads, which
What's
sucks.
that?
But
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
impossible. Skip.
Marvel Spider-Man 2 is a game that really divided
Okay, so here we go. Let's take a look.
opinions, and I think that's something we can all agree on. The game
It is divided, and my biggest problems with it is my true biggest problem is the lack of content. I think the story sucked. Like I think it was absolute garbage, but to me it's lack of content. I mean, the first game had bases you could play, they had races, they had other combat and you know, time challenges, stealth challenges via Taskmaster. They had DLC. You know, New Game Plus came out a lot closer. The DLC, if it is the case, and that's what this video is about. If it is the case that the DLC was canceled because of the hack, I can understand something like that. I can understand because you know they have bigger problems if you know financial information got leaked. Those employees need to be taken care of. They need to protect. You know, they need to protect themselves, protect their you know family and whatnot. All that stuff's completely understandable. You can't fault them for something like that. But it is problematic that the game released the way it did, and maybe it was because they were rushed. A lot of people think you know, oh, Spider-Man Spider-Man 2 was rushed. Sony rushed them, right? They rushed Insomniac. The third act, the Venom arc, was rushed. I think that too, but I don't really like Harry. I don't really like Harry in this game. I don't care that he's Venom. I don't like Harry, and I don't like Venom. I think they're they don't add much to this game. I think it would have been better to have a Peter and Miles story. Peter and Miles versus this ultimate hunter, Craven, and they're working together the entire game to beat him. Throw those secondary villains in and fight shit. Have Craven and the Chameleon, right? Is it not his half brother, as far as I understand? But that's what they really should have done. Um, Anyways, let's get back to it. Let's see. As far as the Marvel Spider-Man 2 DLC.
built on the excellent foundation of the two games that came before
Oh yeah, the content. That's what it was. So you know, if there was more content in Spider-Man 2, even the shit story, in my view, could have been forgiven.
it. Beloved games, especially the
A great opening.
first one, and managed to improve exponentially in some areas while declining quite a lot in others. And that ended up splitting part of the fanbase. There are people who hate Marvel Spider-Man 2 and
Like I guess I colloquially hate it. I think it's a decent game, I hate it because of what it is. It's just so underwhelming. That's the issue to me. I don't hate it because I think it's shitty. I hate it because it's just very underwhelming, and it should have been something so much greater than it was.
think it's a terrible game, and there are people who really like it and see it as an excellent sequel. And even though it's a game that receives a lot of hate, I personally really like it. But I can understand where a lot of that hate comes from. Even though it's a game that is widely loved by both fans and critics, sold very well and continues to do so even today, it made some very questionable decisions that disappointed a lot of people, and when you play it, you can feel that something was missing. It's not a sequel in the style of like The Last of Us Part 2, a game that made some very bold and shocking decisions. It feels more like
I need to get around to playing the Last of Us games. I just gotta throw them on easy mode and just fucking play through them.
It needed more development time to create something more cohesive with everything that came before in order to deliver a better experience for such a highly anticipated sequel. And be careful with the obvious spoilers I'm going to talk about in this video. The game didn't destroy the legacy of the franchise, but it did take away some of that excitement for a possible sequel, which would be the final chapter of the trilogy. But not everything is bad. I think the game improved technically in every single aspect. It's visually a stunning game with very beautiful graphics. The
Yeah, it looks great. I mean, the game looks amazing. There's no denying that.
gameplay is absurdly fun.
Yep, amazing gameplay. It's like, we knew that going in though. From Spider-Man 1 and Miles Morales, we knew the gameplay was going to be great. There's just no way around it. It's got a great combat system, great traversal. Spider-Man 2 is good. This game has the best traversal of any game ever. If you ask me, and definitely any Spider-Man game. What more can you ask for? It is so smooth and fun to just at breakneck speeds glide around the city. When you're fully upgraded, oh boy, you can just soar around the city, swinging, zipping, web wings, point launch, anything. It all flows together so nicely. And the gameplay is so great, which makes it disastrous that there's not a vessel for the gameplay. Where are the challenges, the races, the combat challenges, swinging challenges? You know, like the Arkham games, right? They had in Arkham Knight, they had the AR challenges with, you're racing the Batmobile, you're doing the combat challenges, the Predator maps, things like that to extend gameplay, to give the game more value with its awesome combat and traversal system. It's just so unfortunate how there's so little of it. There's so little of it to go at. It's just play the story mode and stop crimes. That's about it. And some side missions, and you can't even play the hunter blinds, which were a ton of fun. Like in Miles Morales and Spider-Man PS4, you could do the bases again, and those construction bases were so much fun to play because you're fighting in the air, you're swinging around the buildings, fighting enemies at the same time, and you could just replay those over and over again. They were so good. And this, it just doesn't have the same volume of that kind of stuff, and it's really unfortunate that we don't have a vessel for this amazing gameplay that Insomniac's given us. And that's really what the most frustrating and disappointing part is.
And the web swing is phenomenal. In fact, the gameplay is so smooth, so fluid, so satisfying that going back to the previous games feels very weird.
I will say, like, it is difficult to go back and swing around in the first two games, Insomniac Spider-Man games, because this just blows it out of the water. You could just move so much faster. You feel like, no pun intended, you feel like you're swinging underwater in the other games.
Performances, the soundtrack, everything from a technical standpoint is excellent and an improvement over the previous games, but the narrative is where things become much more complicated and where the vast majority of fair criticism
Yeah, I think the narrative sucks.
comes from. And today I want to talk to you guys about what could have been some possible DLCs that we actually never got for Marvel Spider-Man 2. But before that, I think we need to go over why everyone thought and was almost certain that the game was going to receive 1, 2, or even more DLCs, even though Insomniac Games never actually confirmed it, because yes, despite all the rumors, all the things that were being said, Insomniac never publicly came out on their own and announced that the game would receive any kind of expansion. That never happened. But despite that, the game was one of those titles that practically screamed that it was going to have DLC. The entire context surrounding Marvel Spider-Man 2 made it feel obvious that the game would eventually receive expansions, and that's...
So, to me, I've heard people defend this, and what I've heard are things like, well, we have no right to be upset about this, about no DLC. And the reason is because, well, Insomniac never straight up said that there's going to be a DLC, right? If I remember correctly, this is going back a while. It's going back to 2018. We got DLC, or we knew that DLC was coming even before the launch of Spider-Man PS4, right? Because if I recall correctly, you got free access to the DLC or instant access to the DLC if you bought the collector's edition of the game or the enhanced edition of the game, whatever it may be. I thought that was the case. Maybe you even got new suits too along with it. New suits along with the DLC for buying this specific, edition of the game. But this game, they're just saying, well, we didn't announce that. Insomniac never announced that they're gonna have DLC for this game, so the fans shouldn't be upset. And my response to that would be, you know, I guess technically you might be have a point there, but let's say you went to a restaurant and one day you go into a restaurant and you order your meal and fries come with it. Fries just come with the meal. You order a burger and you get your french fries as a side with the meal. And then you eat it, right? And then next time you go in there, you expect you're going to order your burger. Let's say you go in there a month later, you order your burger and you're going to just expect that you're going to get fries with the meal. But the meal comes out and you don't have any fries. It's just the burger, and you say, well, I really thought that where are the fries here? I thought, you guys had served a side of fries. It came with the burger. I thought it was a package deal kind of thing. And they say, well, no, we don't do that anymore. We're not going to give you a side of fries with your burger. And you say, well, why wouldn't you say anything? And they say, well, we never said that we were going to have a free side next time, or we never mentioned before that a side was going to come with the burger, so you have no right to be upset. It's like, maybe that's technically true. They didn't tell us, but it's so implied that it's kind of the same thing here. It's like, well, we expected the DLC because we had it for the first game, and why wouldn't we get bigger and better content for the sequel? They just took a step backwards rather than going forward. If a restaurant did that, you'd be pissed. You'd say, "Why the hell would I keep supporting this? You've gotten worse over time, not better." So that's my view on this.
Because, first of all, the original Marvel Spider-Man also got DLC. Actually, it got 3 DLC chapters known together as Marvel Spider-Man: The City That Never Sleeps.
People thought that the City That Never Sleep DLC, people thought this sucked. I don't think so at all. I enjoyed the City That Never Sleeps. People say it was a cash grab. I've heard that. Not at all. I thought it was pretty decent. I actually ended up waiting for all 3 of them to come out, and I played all 3 of them back to back to back. I was lucky enough to be able to do that. I didn't play them, 1 month and then wait a month and play the Turf Wars and then wait a month and play Silver Lining. I waited for them all to come out and I just played all 3 of them right away.
And what's incredible to me is that the game launched in September 2018 and the DLCs released throughout the following months until the end of the year.
Look at that. That's so amazing how... Look, this isn't even not even 2 months after the game releases. Not even 2 months, boom, DLC 1 drops. Then not even a month after that, DLC 2 drops. Then right around Christmas time, about a month later, DLC 3 drops. How cool is that? It's like, what fucking fan service that is. It reminds me of when Santa Monica Studios announced God of War Ragnarok Valhalla, the DLC, 5 days before the release, and it was free. That was so good. It's like they really love the fans for this, and this is what I mean with going backwards in terms of the content. Gameplay be a one thing, but there's content to be talked about. I mean, what's the most important part of a game? Well, there being something to play, right?
Year that was very good. But of course, it's not just because the first game had DLC that the second one automatically had to as well. The bigger issue is that the game itself left several things unresolved that could easily have been expanded on through DLCs. Some side missions open up specific character arcs that, yes, could be saved for Marvel Spider-Man 3, but honestly would have made much more sense to wrap up within this game already.
Yeah, like these fucking symbiotes. I really hope they, like, Jesus Christ, us getting the Venom game is already a terrifying thought, but if we do, I really hope it's just Cassidy versus Venom, whoever the host is going to be for Venom in the game, and they just clear up the symbiote storyline. Maybe Peter comes in and gets his anti-Venom suit ripped off, and that's no longer a thing in Spider-Man 3, but Jesus Christ, let's get let's please wrap up the symbiotes before we get to Spider-Man 3. We need to focus fully on Norman and Otto. Maybe have some cool side missions. If the game is big and expanded enough, put some time into the side content. But as far as the main story goes, Norman and Otto, two of the two unequivocal greatest Spider-Man villains of all time. We need them to be the focal point. No more of this fucking symbiote bullshit. They're not even in the same league, okay?
And I think those two arguments combined are what made so many people expect the game to receive something. And honestly, I was completely ready for the announcement to drop sooner rather than later. I was already excited for something that hadn't even been officially
After a certain amount of time went by, I was like, yeah, we're not getting anything.
announced yet. But only a few months after the game launched, the real problem for Insomniac happened. In an update release for the game, Insomniac accidentally left the developer menu accessible
I remember like watching videos about this. I never went into this menu, but I do remember watching videos about it. It's really something how they did this.
for anyone to use. It was very, very shocking. Even back when it happened, I was stunned that something like
Yeah, look, there were challenges. Wait,
use. It was
okay. Wingsuit challenge. Oh, I wonder, are those just the yeah, Beetle villain arc? There's one of the DLCs. But the wingsuit challenges, were those in addition to those when you decode the chameleon identity? Those like chases? I wonder if it's different than that.
very, very shocking. Even back when it happened, I was stunned that something like that had slipped through, especially in a PS5 game, because normally a menu like that would only ever be seen on PC, with everything people can do there, but on PS5 it felt bizarre, and it didn't stay up for very long because it was quickly patched out in another update, but people still had enough time to discover a lot of interesting things. Even I managed to get in there and see some stuff we definitely weren't supposed to see, like a literal cut mission from the game, which wasn't anything too crazy but still had its name attached to it, areas we weren't even supposed to see, even more interesting things like controlling characters we normally couldn't play as, or even walking around as Peter Parker without the Spider-Man suit. I kinda wish that had already been in the game officially, but still, there was a ton of stuff we should have never had access to, and at the time it became like a whole event. It was honestly really cool to see. But the most interesting thing of all was that buried inside all of
Look how awful this suit is. I can't wait to take it right off when it goes on, like, in the main story of the game when that stupid suit comes on. I can't wait to take it right off and put the real Miles Morales suit back on.
those menus was one called Beetle Villain Arc, and that's where the whole thing about one potential DLC came from. At that point, it was like just no longer just wishful thinking, at least one DLC had genuinely entered some stage of development. But according to some leaks that came out, Insomniac pretty much became a leak factory during these last few years since the launch of Marvel Spider-Man 2. The real
A leak factory, Jesus.
plan, according to those same leaks, was for there to be 3 DLCs. The first one would have been the Beetle DLC, and for those who don't know, the Beetle is basically like a B or C tier Spider-Man villain from the comics.
The original Beetle was male. He I forget his debut issue, but he's a pretty early Spider-Man villain, if I remember correctly. He shows up pretty. His suit doesn't look like this. I know this is the new Beetle. In that group with like is she with the new Electro too? The new Electro's female. Max Dillon like kissed that girl and transferred his powers to her. It's been a while since. Was it in Nick Spencer's run that the new Beetle came, or was it Zeb Wells' run? I don't remember.
It's honestly a very forgotten villain to the point where I even had to look
Okay, Abner. Yeah, so Abner Jenkins. He was early on a master mechanic who built tech armor to fight heroes. Yeah, he became a freaking spider villain and later joined the Thunderbolts. Okay, so it's Lonnie Lincoln's daughter. But yes, I remember now. So Lonnie Lincoln's daughter was in a relationship with Randy Robertson, and that's when, if I remember correctly, Tombstone and Joe Robertson, they would always get pissed off at each other, and they had to kind of convene and go save him at one point. They had to like put their differences aside and go save their kids because Janice Lincoln and Randy Robertson were in a relationship. Often works mercenary. Okay, let's see if there's anything about that here. No. Okay, so 64 is Abner Jenkins' first appearance. Yeah, it was either in Nick Spencer's run that Janice becomes the new Beetle, or the beginning of Zeb Wells' run. I don't remember. It's right. Spencer's right after Dan Slott. I think he takes over right after Red Goblin.
Her up to learn more about her because she really isn't that well known, but basically this Beetle is a villain with a technological armored suit, and according to some leaks she would control flying robots for us to fight against. The version being used was supposedly the daughter of Tombstone, a villain who appears in both games.
That would have been awesome because Lincoln already exists in this universe, so that's exactly what we want.
And honestly, we don't really know exactly what would have happened in the DLC itself, and I also don't fully know how Beetle works as a character, but inside that developer menu left, people could see part.
Even if the first DLC was a little underwhelming, that would have been okay because to be honest, the heist, like the Black Cat mission, that was the least interesting of the three the three Spider-Man PS4 DLCs. But we were just getting started at that point. That was kind of setting the stage for everything to come. I wonder if the Beetle mission would have been something like that. Maybe Janice Lincoln would have even helped, like, Peter and Miles defeat Carnage if they were going to do a Carnage DLC.
Of the development structure for what we would supposedly get in this DLC. It mentioned Beetle hostages, her introduction, some kind of ambush, the obvious boss fight, and things like that, so overall it looked like another DLC focused on a more secondary Spider-Man villain. It doesn't really make me excited. The idea of fighting robots and bots in general, stuff like that is kinda meh. But yeah, that's basically everything we know about this specific.
I think it could have been pretty cool. I mean, I didn't mind fighting like fighting the Sable jetpack guys was kind of fun, and then the Hammerhead jetpack guys in the Spider-Man PS4 DLC. They were fun, challenging enemies to fight, and there were more bases to do, more combat bases. So that was fun.
DLC, but in that same leak there was supposed to be a Carnage DLC, and that one makes way more sense, because inside the game there's an entire side mission storyline where we follow a cult throughout the game, only to discover that its leader is Cletus Cassidy, who, for those who don't know, is the main host of Carnage, one of the most violent and disturbing symbiotes of all.
Yeah, Carnage is super violent.
And that DLC would have made way.
He had the null symbol on his head there.
One of the most violent and disturbing symbiotes of all. And that DLC would have made way more sense for several reasons, but the biggest and most important one to me is that it would have wrapped up the entire symbiote storyline within a single game.
Yeah, this part would have been good if they, were able to wipe that out, but they're going to have to carry it into something else now, because they're not just going to leave that a loose end.
Venom, Carnage, and then that's pretty much it, because stretching all of that into the third game feels like too much.
I really hope that the null stuff here is just a fucking Easter egg, because if they bring null into the Insomniac verse, oh boy, just count me out. I want nothing to do with it, because it degrounds it. I want my Insomniac Spider-Man grounded. Leave that batshit crazy cosmic, shit null. Leave that to the comics. Leave, the King in Black, Donny Cates' insane batshit crazy writing. Leave that to the comics. Leave it for Donny Cates and those other crazy Marvel writers to leave it to the comics. Leave it to the animated series, fan fiction. Let's have the Insomniac verse be more grounded. And let's, just like the first and second game were, let's have a great Peter Parker and Miles Morales story. And if they want to bring in Silk, no problem. She's pretty cool. Although she was revealed by Ezekiel, right? In the Parker lock. That was right after Superior Spider-Man, right? Where Cindy Moon was revealed, and then it was revealed that she was also bit by it was the Parker lock, right? Like in 2014 or so, and then she was revealed to have been bitten by the same radioactive spider that Peter was. And she's been lying dormant, hiding from Moreland, right? And Ezekiel reveals that. And that's kind of batshit crazy in and of itself, but there's no way they're going to bring the Inheritors into this universe. If they did, just like Null, God help us. Because that'll take away from Norman and Otto. And we're running out of games here.
me. I'm already a little bit tired of the whole symbiote thing, honestly. It would have been perfect just to finish it all in this game already and also finally get rid of Peter's white symbiote suit because let's be honest, you just can't make the third game with that thing, just no.
I think they could make it work, but they'd have to really like bend over backwards to fit this in narratively. I wouldn't even necessarily have a problem if we had it like, especially if Peter like had it in his lab or something like that and it's like, Norman and Otto are so fucking powerful or they've become so powerful in the team they've acquired that the only way for them to win is for Peter to go and grab the anti-venom suit. It'd be a little over the top for my liking, but I guess they could make it work. Other than that, I wonder how they're gonna do, like what kind of powers he's gonna have, special abilities without the anti venom suit. Because Miles already has his evolved venom, and I don't think they're gonna backtrack on that. And as cool as they are, they're gonna want to give Peter something to compensate.
But the DLC itself could have been really amazing if they truly committed to doing justice to Carnage, a boss fight even more brutal than the one against Venom, a villain who actually kills people, someone far more violent. It could have been something really interesting, but there's still some hope that he could appear in a possible Venom game someday. And the last DLC mentioned in those leaks was the Spider-Verse one, and this is the one we know the least about, because supposedly it would have been just a tie-in with the Spider-Man,
So I don't really know what they were gonna do with the Spider-Verse DLC, but I think it would have been that great web trailer that we got. Imagine like swinging around the city with friends and stopping crimes with your friends and stuff and doing challenges. That would have been so much fun. Comboing enemies off walls and floors with a friend, like bouncing enemies across the map and shit. That could have been so cool.
Spider-Verse movie, not really a full story expansion, maybe just a small mission similar to the one already in the game with those spider bots that ends with a little cutscene. It probably would have just added some.
So I think does this make Spider-Geddon and Spider-Verse non-canon? Because remember how in Spider-Verse bringing the Inheritors back, when is it Superior Spider-Man is building a team to stop the Inheritors, and he goes and visits Earth. He goes and visits. Is it 1048 that the Insomniac Spider-Man verse is in? He goes and visits Earth 1048 to grab Insomniac Spider-Man, and then he leaves. He says, "Hey, Miles, stay here. There's this interdimensional crisis against the Inheritors," and then Superior Spider-Man goes and grabs them, or he goes and grabs Peter from this timeline. So that makes that stuff seem non-canon, or this is non-canon, one of the two. I think Spider-Verse and Spider-Geddon, are they considered non-canon? I don't remember.
Skins and a few extras, something much smaller overall, and that's basically everything we know about these DLCs. Most of the information either comes from leaks or just pure speculation, and nowadays we pretty much know for sure that all of those DLCs were genuinely cancelled. Insomniac publicly stated around that time the PC port of Marvel Spider-Man 2 released that they would not be launching any more.
Yeah, that was fucking devastating. Even though we already knew, it still was a stab in the goddamn heart coming from him. While we have no additional story content planned, yeah.
Story
Brutal.
content for the game. But why did this happen? Why did a game that seemed to have everything perfectly lined up, a literal roadmap of planned content ready to release, and end up having lined up a literal...
Okay. Let's see, yeah, 2023, so they were really thinking about the Beetle DLC was gonna come out late. It looks like late 2024. Wow. Or sorry, late 2023. Jesus, yeah, Carnage early 2023, and then Spider Verse a little bit later that year. That makes me wonder how big um Spider-Verse NPC, Spider-Verse mission, Spider-Verse visual filter. I wonder how makes me wonder if Spider-Verse the DLC was going to be really big, because it looks like it's separated quite a lot from the other two. I guess there's only one more quarter in between.
roadmap of planned content ready to release, and
Glory Grant, was that her?
perfectly lined up a literal
Yeah, Glorious Sights. Glory Grant's a great character.
roadmap of planned content ready to release end up having all of it cancelled. And there are a few theories about why all the post-launch content planned for the game was ultimately abandoned. One of the biggest reasons people point to is the massive hack that hit Insomniac not long after Marvel Spider-Man 2 launched.
What
Like,
a
more than a
tragedy.
terabyte of information was leaked. Things related to Wolverine, sales figures, internal material, and a lot of information that probably disrupted plans they had in place. And very likely that caused a huge pivot in several major projects, with the Spider-Man DLCs probably being one of them. That's probably the most widely accepted theory overall, that it wasn't just one single issue but several problems hitting at the same time. First, there was a cyber attack, then there was the fact that Marvel Spider-Man 2 already had an extremely high budget. It reportedly became more that Marvel Spider-Man 2 already had an
So the budget of $315 million, it's mind-boggling how crazy the budget is. And it's like we wonder why modern games, it's like, remember when games back in the early 2000s would, they'd come out in like 2 years. You'd get another game, like a game would come out, then you'd get the sequel 2 years later. And now games take 5 6 years to put out because of these insane budgets. What goes into them, and how can they not take years? That's the downside to having the quality of games that we have today.
extremely high budget. It reportedly became more expensive to make than games like The Last of Us Part 2, God of War Ragnarok, and it became the most expensive game ever produced by PlayStation Studios, and adding multiple DLCs on top of that would only have pushed the budget even higher. There's also the possibility that after all the leaks surrounding Marvel's Wolverine, Insomniac simply decided to shift more of its focus toward that project and make sure they could deliver it properly. So in the end, it was most likely a combination of factors that led to these DLCs never making it into the game. There's always the possibility that we could still see some of these stories like the Carnage or Beetle in another game, maybe in that rumored standalone Venom game, which we still don't know if it was actually cancelled or simply postponed, or maybe these storylines will end up being used in Marvel Spider-Man 3, whether through side content or even main story. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if Carnage is being saved for something much bigger, because he's a larger villain than something that would only be resolved through a side quest. But right now, Insomniac is fully focused on Wolverine. I really doubt we'll hear any
Yeah, let's really hope that, you know, they're all hands on deck for Wolverine, no problem. Wolverine's probably about to go gold here soon. They're gonna finish the game up, and it's not gonna be long. But let's really hope that right after Wolverine, they're all hands on deck for Spider-Man 3. I don't know if we need an intermediate game. As long as the game is big enough and expanded enough for Spider-Man 3, I think they can take care of it. I think they can clear everything up in one game. But it needs to be massive. Like, it can't be, they can't pull the bullshit that they did before with the shorter story and lack of content, because nothing will ever get done.
thing substantial about either a Venom game or Marvel Spider-Man 3 until after Wolverine launches. And with that supposedly coming this year, it probably won't be too long before the game's marketing really starts ramping up. But Marvel Spider-Man 3 has a very, very difficult task ahead of it. And honestly, even though I love Spider-Man, I love the first game, I really like the second one, I also really enjoyed Miles Morales, I'm not especially confident about what comes next. The second game clearly had some development issues, the third act feels like it was missing something.
Well, let's put it this way. I really think that Insomniac is going to take the feedback of this, that, uh, no rushing things, more content. I really hope I shouldn't say I think they will, I hope they take the feedback and um, they improve. And they have every chance to blow us out of the water with Spider-Man 3. I mean, it needs to.
You can tell a lot of material had to be cut and that the game needed more time to tell a stronger and fully developed story. Some of the biggest criticisms are how Venom feels a bit lacking in development and how sometimes Miles can feel like he doesn't fully fit into the whole story. And those are problems that could easily happen again in the third game, because for me the third game needs an even stronger focus on Peter Parker. The villains will most likely be Dr. Octopus and Green Goblin, two villains that are deeply tied to Peter. Miles doesn't really have much to do with that, and then at the end of the second game they also decided to tease yet another Spider character. It's not looking too good. Still, Wolverine looks very interesting so far, so for now, all we can do is wait for the next games and probably accept that those DLCs are never going to happen. So,
Yeah, those DLCs are not gonna happen.
what about you guys? Would you have liked to see these DLCs, or do you really just not mind that they were cut? Personally, I would have really liked to see them, and I think they could have really helped the game a lot by improving its overall reputation, because I honestly don't think the idea that it's a bad game is fair. I actually like it quite a lot. But anyway, leave a like, subscribe if you want, it genuinely
that's it.
helps, and